Welcome to Theories of Innovation and Creativity for Full Sail University's Masters of Innovation and Entrepreneurship program. This is Jill Craddock speaking. Today or tonight, we're going to be talking for a few minutes about 7 innovation blocks as you move forward with week 4 and start thinking about the innovation strategy for your innovation strategy pitch assignment. The first innovation block that we're going to talk about is habit and learning. Habits are ingrained in us as we grow up from our early childhood. They're the well-learned kind of customary routines, our responses and patterns that we have, responses to the world. They're a blessing and a curse. We need habits to know what to do with ourselves every day. It's important to have a pattern of daily activities of life. But it's also too easy to kind of go on autopilot, like you see in this cartoon, right? An example of a habit that I really like that doesn't go along really with the idea of a creative person, Steve Jobs is, of course, one of the most creative people that we can think of. Steve Jobs had a habit of wearing jeans and a black turtleneck every day. However, this did not really inhibit his creativity. His explanation for this was that his clothing or fashion wasn't important enough to him to waste time and brain power thinking about that. So it freed his mind to think about other ways to be creative and innovative. So it seemed to work for him. The next block to innovation is rules and traditions. So this is the second way that innovation can be stalled. Rules are definitely important. Groups can really not function without rules and traditions, but sometimes rules can restrict innovation, particularly if questioning a rule results in some type of punishment or any kind of negative consequence, which really starts happening in school. So a lot of people learn, and it's their habit not to question rules. Rules generally keep an institution working, but they can work against creativity. So this organizational chart here is an example of like procedural barriers, let's say. This is a city government organizational chart, and it's not uncommon in a situation that we have here of status hierarchy for someone to be promoted pretty much based on analytical style of thinking over creative thinking, or for somebody to avoid a long-term visionary decision that doesn't show an immediate payback in a corporate or in a larger setting. So rules and traditions and kind of keeping the status quo, so to speak, will sometimes be an innovation block. Perceptual blocks are a third innovation block. This is just kind of how we're accustomed to perceiving situations based on our experiences or our background. So I have these 4 words up here. I love you only. So look at these 4 words, and I'm going to show you how the slight rearrangement of these words affects the whole perception. I'm just going to move the word only around here, and think about how this changes the perception of the statement. Only I love you. I only love you. I love only you. And then back to I love you only. So see that perceptual block and the change in perception there in that sentence when you just kind of juggle the words, which is pretty interesting. And then most of us have probably seen this optical illusion, which is related to perception. Many people look at this and they see a chalice in the outline of the white there. Other people look at it. Many people see two faces profiling, looking at each other. The nose is almost touching, and the black. And so, whatever you see first, you have to adjust your perception to see the second image. Okay, so that's an example of perceptual block. And then we have cultural blocks as our 4th block to innovation. Cultural blocks basically come from societal expectations to conform, or a fear of being different. Cultural blocks kind of assume that because people aren't in a certain group, or maybe they're not striving towards innovation, that it's not creativity or something unusual, that it's not acceptable. We first see this in grade school. A creativity researcher very well-known creativity researcher, prolific, named Paul Torrance, describes the first time we see this is the fourth grade slump, it's known as, where a lot of studies worldwide confirm that this fourth grade slump is actually societal rather than biological. So it's kind of like that pressure to be like everybody else. So it's important with our kids that we teach creativity, or we encourage creativity to flourish. And the things that can stifle innovation and creativity here, with everybody, but of course starting in children, is that it's definitely uncomfortable to be different or have a fear of not fitting in. And that would be the example of the cultural block, and this illustrates that quite well with the kid in the Viking situation there. Okay, emotional blocks. Emotional blocks are those things that kind of distract us. They preoccupy us in our minds, where we could otherwise be flourishing in that innovative and creative space. This could be anything like fear, anxiety, depression. It could be even overwhelmingly positive emotions, but anything that just interferes with that clear thinking. So the fear, for instance, could be a fear of rejection of bringing up a new or innovative idea. It could be fear of ridicule or fear of being criticized or punished, something like that. Anything that can come into play in an atmosphere where new ideas are not encouraged. So emotional blocks there, something to keep in mind. Resource barriers. We don't have enough of something. And it's not just money. It could also be time. It could be we don't have enough people to do that. We don't have enough information. We don't have enough supplies. There could be a conflict, an interpersonal conflict in your workplace. And here I thought I would show you my favorite example that I've ever heard of overcoming resource barriers. And maybe you've heard of this too. It kind of got around a good bit a while ago, but there's this little boy named Kane. It's called Kane's Arcade. He made his own arcade in the back of his father's auto mechanic shop. He doesn't even have electricity for this arcade, and he figured out ways to make this work. So he had asked his father for money to do an arcade, and his father just didn't have the money, so he took boxes from the auto supplies that came in, and he saved them, and he took his allowance and got some prizes. And he even asked at one point for money to get the game that, as a hook you can pull a toy and make it move and everything. And he didn't have the resource of money or even electricity. So you can see what he did here. There's a hook that he manually moves. So this filmmaker came across what he was doing and made a short film about it. And there's now a scholarship in his name. They've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to encourage this kind of innovation and creative thinking. So that's Kane's Arcade. Our final block to innovation and creativity are idea squelchers, and those statements that you hear right off the bat when you say something or when you hear an idea, and it's that immediate "we can't because." We've never done it before. These are a few of my favorites, but you could come up with hundreds of these. It's a final resource, final innovation block we'll talk about before I'll ask you to check yourself. But think about the last time you heard an idea squelcher and what exactly it was. And remember that it's easier to say no than to figure out a way to say yes. Okay? So, what do you do about all of the idea squelchers out there and all of the innovation blocks that are out there? You come to the table with an open mind. And that's not to say an empty head, but an open mind and that attitude of growth to kind of build on what could work. And you'll have a lot of ideas and you'll hear a lot of ideas, and most of them, they might be bad or they won't work. And that's just the math of it. For most people who are working hard in their innovations. But what makes for success in innovation is definitely persistence. And it's recognizing the blocks and moving past the blocks. And it's not easy to move past the blocks, and it's not easy to hang in there sometimes. But knowing those innovation blocks is definitely half the battle. And you have to keep going. So I'm giving you a case study here. So I'd like you to check yourself and think about what you've heard here about the innovation blocks. And this is a real life invention. The patent has been filed. An inventor in Connecticut made this, and it's a bat suit. So people will get as close as ever, as close as they have or can, to flying. And it's called a bat suit because it's based on the way that a bat flies. And the bat is the closest to a human in terms of the flight, closer than a bird. So you'd put this on and you would be like towed down a mountain or some type of incline. You would lean forward and you would fly. So you would just kind of take that leap, and it would definitely be a leap of faith. But at this point, so you can imagine this inventor has heard probably every block, probably heard all of these things and then some. Okay. However, all the prototypes that have gone out filed the patent, and I don't think it's on the shelves. I don't think you can go to Sports Authority and pick it up, but the patent is filed and the prototype is out there. So let's look at what idea squelchers you may have heard, and what those innovation blocks come from. Okay, that's not a bat suit; it's a bird suit. Which block would that be? Perceptual block. All right, perceiving a bat or a bird, right? Okay, way too many people are afraid of flying for that. Which one would it be? That would be a emotional block. And this is Florida. There's no way that would work. Cultural block, okay? And I also maybe would accept resource barriers because there are no mountains in Florida, not a lot of inclines, but the culture in Florida could be perceived that there are not a lot of like mountain kind of sports going on. So either one of those could actually apply. So that's your little self quiz. So keep that open mind when you go to the table, even if it's on your own, whenever those idea squelchers come in your mind. Block the blocks and keep on going forward until you're filled with ideas that open you up. And for more on the idea of innovation blocks and creativity blocks, you can check out the textbook called Creativity is Forever by Gary Davis. Okay, thanks for listening, and stay in contact with me as we move forward. Talk to you soon.